What's up everybody, back with a Magnum Quest video here, and in this one, I did say there's a better chance of me uploading an updated tier list before the April update happens, and well, it's happened. If you've been with this channel, you know it's very hit or miss when I get around to uploading. But I strayed away from all my accounts. I got 3 total going right now, my tower of drafts to make this happen, so let's get it. So this was my previous tier list back in December. It's missing Revna, Rose, and then Panda, or Ling Ling, or Lyu Ling, or Cute Fluffy Ball. Overall, I liked how I made this with a very clean approach, but I think I can do a little bit better. I also have 0 PvP knowledge, so when I stated this was overall for PvE and PvP, it just got way too much to manage. PvE, you got chapters, dungeon, events, trial, bosses. PvP, you got Arena, Battlefield of the Gods, and now Plains Expedition. There's just so many variables at hand to be able to condense all this into what I did. You're going to need to be able to compromise a lot to get an average ranking, and it's just not as accurate as I would have liked. I figured it would be nice to show any changes that have been made, such as hero rankings from this one to my new updated one for April. Timestamps will be available in the video description down below, since this will be 2 parts. So bringing up the latest one on the screen right now, as you can see, the vibe is totally different. There's a lot more going on, which I tried to hopefully make it not confusing. I separated it into 2 categories, PVE Content and PVE Bosses. Also, you can see there's less rankings. I made a S, God tier, A, Strong Choice, B, Good but Situational, and then C, just better options. And then you're gonna notice some heroes have a star on their hero icon. If you look at the bottom, this just means it's a special mention, and they can be moved up or down a ranking based off the situation or your perspective, which I'm gonna be covering in this video. That's also why I feel like tier list images, it's just hard to show everything visually without words, because you don't wanna clutter the image so much you can't see anything, which is kind of what happened here, but I think it's still pretty decent. Alright, so enough chit chat, chitter chatter, chitty chatty, batter up, let's do this. Part 1, starting off with the upper half, which is focused on PvE content. It's going to be chapters, dungeon, event, trials. So for S tier, I have Ion and Sir. The reason why I got rid of my OP tier in my December tier list is there's just too many heroes here that aren't necessary or have got hit hard due to game updates. I'm talking about Kados, but I'll get into that later. So for Ion, for PvE, you're going to need her. Early on, you can get away with not using her, but there's still going to be like stages where she will be the deciding factor, and eventually you're going to need her all the time. Having a hero who can have your heroes cheat death is game changing, because it allows you to build a more offensive setup, since you have that safety cushion, so to speak, where if a hero takes a fatal blow, Ion allows them to cheat death. Or you can build more defensive and just survive maybe a very offensive enemy setup. If they ever introduce another hero who can do something similar, I'm sure they're going to make their way to this ranking as well. Sir, everyone knows, or if you don't, I'm telling you now, is the best hero in the game. I mean, it's a dragon lady. How can a game not make this hero badass? Basically, I view her as Daenerys. She can do damage, she can heal your team. However, it's a little bit of a weird mechanic, and it's like a V-shaped radius. So hero positioning is very important. It's why you see many boss setups with Cindy in front of Sir, because if she was off to the side, she wouldn't be in that V-shaped radius and she would get no heals. She can buff your team with damage. She has an annoying skill, Scorched Earth, which can prevent heroes' abilities like Dracula's Throw. It's weird, I think it's based off like a damage threshold. I know it's very frustrating to go up against, whether you're doing it in PvE or PvP. She can tank. Basically, she's everything in the game, hence S ranking, aka God tier. For the next tiers, there's a lot more heroes, so I'm not going to cover them all to save on video time, but if you've been following my channel, I'm quite positive I mentioned every single hero at least once and their importance to the game. So A tier, aka Strong Choice, which is equivalent to S tier on my old one, Ares is the first hero you're going to see with a star. The reason being, as I've said this many times before, if I had $1 for every mention, I'd have maybe $50, which I'd then buy the Hunter Order Pass, so I actually wouldn't mind that. But yeah, the reason is he's going to drop in ranking as you progress. So for the majority of the player base, he will be in the B, aka Good but Situational ranking. If just starting out and using him, he's going to shine for you in the A ranking and then fade when you go into mid game and late game. Changes from my December tier list. Hopefully this isn't too confusing the way I organized it this time, because it's different with rankings and the setup is a little bit different. But OP tier is no longer, it became S. S tier is now A tier is B, and then B and C is now just C. I placed Harry in B, which dropped in ranking. That's my personal opinion, but you can see he does have the star, so certain situations he can excel into the A ranking. I just honestly never utilized outside bosses much. Throughout my 3 accounts, I would only sub him in if I needed an extra DPS boost. He just wasn't on my oh my god go-to radar. I placed Ekra in B, dropped in ranking as well, simply because once again wasn't a go-to for me and only utilized her in the Fortress Dungeon. Obviously the higher the enemy's scale, the better she is due to her skill kit, so Fairhaven Trial, she shines a lot, but that comes around once in a while and I don't even go past 60, so she's not needed for me. If they ever give better rewards, more incentive other than simply a frame to go all the way up to 100 with that frustration, I might try again, but I honestly haven't since probably August. I placed Osishi in B, dropped in ranking, and has a star just like Harry, meaning certain situations she can excel to A. Ever since the Act 1 nerf, chapter 20 to 30, it got nerfed to the ground. Like, the difficulty scaling was like a magician trick. It went from I'll be stuck on this stage here for 3 months to, oh wow, hey, I can beat this stage my first try on my other accounts while being way under leveled compared to my main account. It was really frustrating to see this happen, but hey, my other accounts skyrocketed in progression, so I can't really complain. So because of this, I feel her importance is still needed, it's just now more situational. I placed Kados in A, dropped in ranking compared to OP in December on this one because when they nerfed hit ER and attack ER stats on runes, mostly hit ER, Kados suffered a lot. Kados was insane because with hit ER, he would just have his ultimate up instantly after using it, meaning permanent AoE enemy team silence. It was broken, so I can understand why they had to reduce the values. If you weren't aware, hit ER, meaning hit energy recovery, so the energy amount you get being hit was 25%. Now it's 10%. That's a big drop. Attack ER, the opposite, so the energy amount you get hitting was 25%, now it's 15%. Still a substantial drop. Because of this, his importance value decreased. I'm not saying he still isn't really good, but S ranking level with Sur and Ion, not in my opinion. I placed Lycidas, aka Dracula, in A, dropped in ranking compared to OP in December on this one because I really wanted to differentiate between the rankings, and he isn't the best of the best. Is he strong? Of course. He allows you to diversify your setup, meaning allows for more use of your heroes you normally wouldn't use due to how his skill kit works. He's got an AoE silence, but different than Kados. Kados hits everyone regardless of his positioning. Dracula is directed to the most enemy dense area. And he also has a lot of perks to share with his blood contract hero. And he can also throw your frontliner to the enemy battlefield. So for A tier, I pretty much covered the ones I wanted to talk about when I compared my old tier list to this one. So Ares, Kados, and Lycidas. Then I added in Revna, who wasn't on the December tier list. I actually think Revna could be S ranking due to her just countering everything and doing crazy damage, but without Ion, I feel PVE content for her will be an issue since she's just going to die quickly. The main reason is she jumps down onto the enemy side, grabbing everyone's attention. Don't get me wrong, it gets me hype every time I see this and it reminds me of Thor. But because of this, relying on Ion, I mean, you're not always going to need Ion for her to survive. You could be over leveled, the enemy setup might not have that much damage, etc. But it poses a big problem. I used to build her damage, meaning attack in her star map, etc. But found the defense path much better since she already does high damage. It's the survivability issue I have a problem with. And you may also be like, whoa, who's that? I mean, is that Mary Elith? Yeah, after her buffs or her skill swap, she just blew up in terms of how impactful she was. And then from here, it changes completely. So I won't be referencing the December tier list anymore. So for B tier, there's a lot of heroes with a star. Alden. I feel in certain setups, primary with Lycidas, aka Friendly Dracula, his ranking can bump up to A because he can be very helpful if you're lacking a gold 4 or better Kados due to not meeting that minimum combat power requirement. His freezes, and he's got a lot of proc chances.
Allow me to break the ice. My name is Freeze. Learn it well.
Allows you to turn the fight in your favor as soon as his ultimate goes off. Obviously, the more enemies affected, the better, since it's not a huge radius, or when he dies, he resurrects and freezes surrounding enemies. Because of this, you can beat stages that normally you weren't able to due to the lockdown. Arthur, I feel early on his ranking can bump up to A as he can help you out with survivability issues, but soon as you transition into mid and late game, he suffers, which makes your team's survivability suffer because that's what his purpose is. I really do hope he gets a buff because I think he's a very solid hero. I like his star map, but you'll notice he dies very quickly as you later progress through the game, which doesn't allow you to utilize all his tricks like healing, shields, etc. Cyan, similar to Alden, I feel he can be very helpful when dealing with certain enemy setups and bump up to A. Setups such as an enemy Durla so you can jump onto her. Remember, Cyan blinks to the enemy mirrored, so if he's back left, he's going to jump to the enemy back left. And then you can time his ultimate to interrupt Durlas. He's great at misguiding an enemy fair so you can keep your team from being pulled in. He can bypass Sir, that annoying Scorched Earth skill that I mentioned at the beginning of the fight, so not being interrupted mid-jump. He also does solid damage. Harry, once again, similar to Alden and Cyan, can have his ranking bump up to A. I personally didn't use him consistently that much across 3 accounts, like I said, for this particular PvE content. Obviously, Faction Dungeon, he's a must, but I found myself only bringing in Harry when I felt my DPS was lacking, as his ultimate is, well, I'm sure you know, it's nuts. Gives attack and a haste buff. Or if my supports and tanks needed to get to their ultimates faster to boost my survivability, maybe if the enemy setup had a heavy DPS like a Gaia, Carlotta, etc. So he definitely serves a purpose, but I feel, at least for my opinion, he's good but situational. And then we have Lyu Ling, or as I say, Panda, can move up to ranking A as well, and the reason for this is because his ultimate continuously removes all negative effects to allies within the radius, and it's quite the big radius, and positive effect for enemies. Plus, it also increases energy regen, so yeah, this ultimate, once it gets going, similar to Durla's, it can just keep popping off. Also heals, so there's definitely purpose for him, but I feel he gets more use in PvP, like Plains Expedition and Battlefield of the Gods. Obviously, when you get into Act 2, you need 2 and 3 teams, you're going to probably put him in there if you have him. For Osishi, I swear this is the last star in this ranking, but yeah, Osishi can also move up to ranking A. She still is one of the best crowd control or CC heroes in the game. However, as I mentioned with the Act 1 nerf, she isn't as needed. Anytime you're struggling with an enemy stage, whether that's because of an enemy Durla ulting and then just ruining your entire life, or an Arthur just shielding and healing and then shielding, well, Osishi can easily take care of all of them. And that's why I feel, even though I keep her in my pocket, when I do choose to bring her out, she's amazing. The only issue I have with her is she does have a skill called Variations where she confines the enemy with the highest attack. And as much as you want that to be one of those heroes I mentioned like Durla, Arthur, Gaia, Alden, etc., it seems to always be a support, and that's why her ultimate is the be-all you can be-all, and it's an AoE sleep that can cancel enemy skill casting. And finally, the C tier, basically the leftovers, but don't get me wrong, having leftovers food-wise is what I live for, but that's regarding food and is nowhere near the same thing, but damn. I really do love food and waking up at 2 a.m. checking the fridge for some Taco Bell. So this whole grouping of the C rankings, some heroes, some may not be used at all, some may be used a little bit, but the whole idea behind this ranking, as well as it says, there's just better options. These heroes may do better elsewhere, such as in PvP or below in bosses, but as for PvE content, chapter, dungeon events, trial, etc., they're just not as needed. The only exception I find here, I added a star, is Fang. He may be able to bump up to the B ranking due to the Fortress Dungeon. I used him quite a bit across all 3 of my accounts in the earlier dungeon floors, like pre-150 or something like that. Then I added in Rose, who wasn't on the December tier list. I'm going to be honest here. After the free trial of using her, max or whatever your account got her for those 3 days, I never used her again. I didn't summon for her, meaning I didn't use any gold faction cards, my faction summons, my wish cards. I didn't do anything. Honestly, this hero was, in my opinion, the biggest disappointment in terms of a new hero release to date. She just doesn't impress me. I never see anyone using her. I liked her skill animations, but in terms of her actual use, I wasn't gaining anything PvE or PvP. My initial thought was I found her really squishy, like she would die before she did anything. Kind of how Fabian was when he was released and I tested him out. The issue eventually went away, but it wasn't because he got buffed or anything. It was simply due to my raising my squad level more and more, and then some more on top of that. So that's not a helpful option to like the majority of players because that costs money, lots of it. Another concern is I wanted a boss DPSer, but everything she brings to the table in terms of marking a target, raising allies crit, can just be replaced by like arcane cards without taking up a hero spot in your setup. Or the fact that her passive only procs when the target is defeated to boost her attack permanently, and that just doesn't work on bosses. So yeah, I just wasn't impressed by her damage, and she just wasn't what I was hoping for, and haven't really found any spot for her, not even in the Shadow Dungeon. So comment down below if you actually use Rose, because I honestly never see anyone using her, and I would really like to hear your thoughts about her. Now that part 1 is over, grab a drink, a snack, or both. If it's coffee, I'll take a cup as well. I love coffee. Too much, actually. I love coffee way too much. Part 2, the bottom half, which is going to be focused on PVE Bosses, Frostpeak, Puppet Corpse, Puppet Wars, and then events. Bosses are what I enjoy the most in this game. I can go months just staying on the same chapter stage, even though I can beat the stage to progress. I just enjoy bosses. I enjoy looking around at different setups. I enjoy using different heroes, different arcane cards. For S tier, there's quite a number of heroes here, and this forms the boss meta. We got Cinia, Fang, Harry, Hista, Issy, and then Sir. Cinia still holds the top spot in terms of energy distribution to your team, plus she buffs your 2 highest attack heroes to be even stronger, so it's going to be very tough to dethrone her. When Panda Man was introduced, I was thinking maybe he just might, maybe, possibly, but no. Testing was done, and Cinia is still far superior in regards to optimizing for the best boss damage you can get. Fang is the best starter boss DPSer I can recommend. Survivability is a bit of an issue, but not nearly as bad as the other heroes because of his ultimate granting him a shield based off the damage done. And in the beginning, most players were probably going to run him with Arthur. He's an easy way to knock out those Awakened Demon levels going up to the max right now, which is 10, or getting those Puppet Corpse boss hatred rewards. Harry as of right now is irreplaceable, and who knows how long this is going to be for, but based off how they release heroes, do buffs, nerfs, they really don't do these that often. I'm assuming he's going to be in this ranking forever. Strong words right here, but I'm pretty confident it's true. His ultimate is a game changer, attack and haste. What's not to love about this? Hista is very good but more squishy than Fang, which is why I always suggest to start off with Fang, whether that's with Ascension, Investment, stuff like that, because Fang can carry harder due to his ultimate being multiple attacks, so this number can be enhanced by stacking crit damage, getting stronger, etc., while Hista is all about bleeds, and bleeds cannot crit, so the damage falls behind Fang's. However, the faction advantage she gets on the guild boss Frostpeak being Forest, since she's wild, that's a 25% boost, so eventually working on her will improve your guild boss damage further. Issy will be your hero you're going to want to transition to replace Fang. Squad level plays a big part in the bosses because of how they made the mechanics, meaning the more damage you do, the more damage you take. So you can spend as much as you want, but get punished because your heroes won't survive the entire boss Frostpeak battle duration. And then the only way to solve this is to spend more or sit back, drink a cold one, and idle and idle and idle to increase your squad level. It's a very weird thing, like spend more but take a couple steps backwards. Eventually the boss will stop doing increased damage, so if your team can survive, they're always going to survive even if you improve your power. I've said it before, but I think it's like squad level 380-ish, 400, somewhere in there, there is a magic number that allows your heroes to survive the whole battle due to the scaling without having to need Arthur. But yeah, back on track here. Issy's damage is crazy. Her poisonous swarms just make her damage go from here to here to here. I think you get the idea, and her ultimate releases an additional swarm, then activates all swarms, and it also helps that she's part of the wild faction who have an advantage over Forest. So naturally, she's going to be the go-to for guild boss, the Frostpeak, for example. Then finally, Sir, similar to Harry being irreplaceable and the fact she is perfect everywhere in this game. I mentioned her earlier in the video, so it's no surprise she is here. I'm pretty sure everyone knows about Sir, wants Sir, and needs Sir. So for the A tier, it's looking pretty empty, and that's because there's a huge difference between the heroes in S tier ranking and then after. Since there's only 3 heroes here, I'm going to go over each briefly. So for Arthur, he has a star because early on he's going to be needed for bosses to have your team survive the whole battle duration, but as you progress he's going to drop in ranking. Mid to late he becomes less and less needed, and that's because he's taking the spot of another DPSer. So in order to improve your overall damage, sorry Arthur, but you gotta go. Fi is very helpful because of that haste buff from his scurry skill for the team. So for starting awakened demons such as Dumb Tier to interrupt binge drinking, he does do decent damage himself, but mostly you're going to see him in the Puppet Corpse Julian boss, but he needs heavy investment. He's not a hero you can simply ascend and then expect a lot from. You really need to complete his star map. I have him here because I do hope one day he gets a damage buff and feel he's more versatile than the heroes in the following tiers. Wyndon, now I have him here because obviously he's strong, he does good damage, and he also buffs other heroes, so it's a 2-for-1 special. He is an S tier worthy in damage, but I feel he's also higher than B tier because of his skill kit. Swing that staff, Gandalf, do your thing, because I definitely used him a lot on my other accounts until I was able to build up a Hista. So for B tier, there's a few heroes I wanted to mention. Durla has a star because given the right content, she can move up in ranking, such as the Prince Pumpkin Halloween World boss we saw, or be helpful against the Wyndon and Puppet Corps or Bill and Puppet Wars due to that faction advantage that I keep referring to. But on a neutral boss, she just doesn't give me the damage I'm looking for and shines better in other PvE content or PvP. Fabian, I think, has the potential to be higher ranked, but gets outshined by the S tier ranking DPS heroes like Fang, Issy, and Hista. However, having said that, he is a solid choice for Puppet Wars, since you can't use the same hero in more than one attack unless it's a completely new one, meaning like if you had a maxed Fabian, then a gold 2, but I only advise using duplicates for heroes like Cinia, Harry, and Sir. It's easier just to hire a DPS mercenary from your guild. He ignores all defense on his ult, and at 20 stacks of ferocity, his autos do as well, which is really helpful for maximizing damage. Gus I chose to place here because I feel he has better use than the C tier heroes, specifically on bosses where he has a faction advantage, similar to Durla, so like Wyndon in Puppet Corps and Bill in the Puppet War. Potential for high single target damage because his ultimate launches 8 attacks to a random enemy, but since there's only one, being the boss, all 8 of those attacks are focused on that said boss. Panda, like I mentioned, is still inferior to Cinia, but can be an alternative for Puppet Wars if you lack duplicate Cinia copies or if new bosses ever come to the game because of his ability to heal and increase energy regeneration. Marielith has proven herself to, after her buff to do high damage due to being HP percentage based, so naturally she may be a good pick for, situationally since bosses have a lot of HP. We saw this in the Maze event where Fair was the final boss. And then finally we have Vieira, similar to Fabian, where she just unfortunately gets outshined by the S tier ranking DPS heroes. I honestly haven't found the need to use her yet despite maxing her star map because even in Puppet War, maybe on Fafnir who should have a neutral faction, she gets outperformed by Fabian. I still use her sometimes, but yeah, right now I wouldn't invest into her, but maybe down the road, as I stated, more bosses will be introduced to boost her importance because she has a very strong skill, Energized Slash, that deals HP percentage. But anytime you can have a faction advantage, that hero should be the dominant choice. And then for C tier, there's a crap load of heroes here because the boss meta is a small hero pool right now, which is good and bad. It's good because it's less heroes you're going to need to focus on, invest into, to be able to put up that top boss damage numbers, but bad because there's very little hero variety. There's just no point in using heroes who are of lesser value for that specific content. So comment down below what you think of this list, anything you might change, anything you might add. I'm always interested in hearing the Magnum Quest community's feedback. As always, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.